Good morning, ladies and gent. Good morning, ducks. Hey y'all, good morning. Welcome back to Roots Refuge Farm. It is not crazy early. I just dropped my kids off at school and I have about an hour before I have an appointment this morning, so I wanted to come in and check on my carrots that I sowed under boards. I thought I'd bring you guys out here this morning for a little garden pop in. So I have information out about how I like to sow carrots, which is, to put it very simply, you just kind of disturb the soil, make sure it's nice and smooth, make sure it's watered, and then sprinkle the carrot seeds on top of the soil, not pressing them in, not covering them, but then you cover them with a board. And the function of this is that carrot seeds are teeny, 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 tiny, and it's very easy to put them too deep, and then they won't make it to the soil. A seed only has so much energy stored inside of it. So when a seedling comes out of the seed, if the seed is too deep in the soil, the plant will emerge from the seed, but then it'll run out of energy before it hits the surface. It needs to get to the surface so it can begin photosynthesizing and creating more energy. So with something like carrot seeds that are so tiny, it's very easy to sow them too deeply. The other thing is, which it's not really the case in this particular sowing because we haven't had a lot of rain, but they're so small that if you sow them as shallow as they need to be sown, if it rains, a lot of times they'll wash away. If there's any sort of like incline whatsoever in your garden, which these are raised garden beds, but they still have just the slightest incline, which means if it rained, all of my carrot seeds would wash down and I'd have like a big clump of carrots growing down in like the corner, the lowest point of the bed. So I actually peeked on these the other day and there were a few little sprouts coming out. So I think that I'm probably gonna go ahead and, yeah, this one has quite a few also. See all this? Teeny tiny little things. I'm gonna go ahead and lift these because they need the sun, they need to photosynthesize, so I don't want to leave them covered too long. There will probably still be some that come up, but I like that I'm seeing quite a few here. Another thing that the board coverage, which you can cover with anything. I've had people tell me they have used cardboard, weighted down with rocks, you know, just sheets of plywood. You could cover with anything. It doesn't have to be a board. I just happen to have boards lying around and they don't wash away easily or get blown away by the wind. But another thing that this does, if you live in a place that, like I do, that it's getting cool at night, it's not freezing yet, it is definitely chilly in the mornings and overnights, but the day can still get relatively warm. Like it can still get over, we've been getting up to almost 80 or right around 80. There's one day that was a couple degrees over than that. That's say 26 Celsius. So that's kind of warm for carrots to germinate. They still will, but maybe not as readily. So by covering the soil with a board, I'm protecting it from the sun during the heat, the hottest part of the day, which can help with germination. So where I live, where it's so warm, we cannot grow carrots in the summer. And you could sow them over winter and grow them through the spring, but that's actually a little bit more of a gamble because our springs can get very warm. Last year didn't. Last year we probably could have grown carrots just fine, but the fall is really where it's at for growing root vegetables all around. So Will and I were out here together last week and we sowed this whole bed with seeds, and he was the one sowing the carrots. And I'd given him multiple seed packages and some of them were older. And I told him to just, if they were older, I had one pack that I'd left in the greenhouse so it had gotten hot, and carrot seeds don't love that. So I said, just sow these a little more thickly. A couple of these, I'm not seeing a ton of germination underneath. I'm gonna leave them for a little while longer. Not alarming. It could simply just be that they are older seeds, or it could be that that variety just takes a little longer to germinate. This is multiple varieties, whereas some have many coming up. Now this board underneath this, there's a whole bunch that are just popping out of the seed shells. I don't know how well this is going to convey on camera, but you can kind of see all of these little seedlings here, and they're not standing upright yet. So these I'll keep covered, and I'll probably pull that board off maybe like tomorrow morning, and they'll probably all be upright. So this isn't an exact science. Now over here, I sowed radishes. I did one row on the outside, and then one row on this side, and then down the middle I did sweet peas. So there's the little sweet pea first coming up. This is brand new today. Happy birthday, little guy. And these came up a couple of days ago. And on things like this, I knew those, and I'm saying sweet peas because I'm southern, shelling peas, sugar snap peas. That's what these are. I did some sugar snap peas and I sowed some shelling peas. We call them sweet peas, but that's not what everybody else calls them. But the radishes will grow pretty fast, and so by the time these are getting big enough that they would actually cause problems for the radishes, it'll be time to harvest the radishes. And then these are little tiny alyssum seeds. Little things. I just threw a bunch in there to kind of fill this up. And then down here I've got beets in this section. I have calendula. Barely seeing tiny little babies come up. Just the tiniest little head poking out. These will probably be standing up right here in the next 48 hours. They'll be able to be a lot more visible. But, you know, I check my seedlings like 30 minutes after I sow them the first time. Oh yeah, these beets are all coming up. Here's another little interesting fact. So when you sow a beet seed, you can sow one seed, but it actually has the capacity inside one seed to grow multiple beets. So there's 3 little seedlings coming up out of the same place. I was pretty cautious here to only put 1 seed in each hole. So I may thin some of those out. A couple of beets can actually grow together. They just won't get as big, which I don't mind because I actually prefer beets on the smaller side for roasting. They get less woody that way. So I'll just keep an eye on that. I'm so excited all those seeds are up. I still deal with the most ridiculous feeling every time I sow seeds of like, are those gonna come up? Is this actually gonna work? I've sowed thousands of seeds. I've been gardening extensively for a decade, and then before that, you know, for another, let's see, 6 years. So that's a lot of seeds over that period of time. And even still, every single time I plant a whole bed like that, I'll start checking, and then by about the 2nd or 3rd day, I'm like, I don't know. So silly. I've got all of these seedlings that are about ready to be planted. I'm gonna go load a couple of trays of these into the side-by-side and haul them down to the tunnel where we're filling the beds, because I've got to figure out what I'm planting where in there of these things. Hey guys, it's Will.
Howdy.
Will was making a video of me making a video.
Is that what it would be? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Inception, YouTube style.
I keep finding dead butterflies.
I know. It makes me sad. They get in the greenhouse. My kids were wanting to put a shadow box together, and I told them that they could probably find a lot of specimens in the greenhouse. Yeah, this stuff looks really good.
Does look good.
It's gonna be a lot of food. All of our seeds are coming up. I moved some of the carrot boards.
I saw them yesterday.
Yeah.
Are they coming up?
Yeah, I left some of the boards because there's little spotty germination still, but I knew some of the. Yeah, but it hadn't rained, so it should be fine. But some of those seeds were older. I am the most disappointing visitor to this yard because I drove the food wagon, but I didn't bring the breakfast. Well, this is them telling me how worthless I am to them. Anybody else just narrate their entire farm animals experience, because that's me telling them, coming up with whole conversations and stories about how they feel. So we've got these beds ready and have been plugging away at filling them. Got some that look pretty good here. And this is where a lot of those plants are going to go that we started. So starting fall plants is just the same as starting spring plants. If you start them inside under cover and then you're going to move them out, you have to harden them off. So I want to make that very clear because you guys are about to watch me take my plants from inside the greenhouse and put them out where they're going to be planted. But this high tunnel has a 50% shade cloth on them. So this is not the same thing as taking them from inside to outside. They are going to be exposed here to probably a little more sun simply because of what can shine in the sides, and they're going to be exposed to a little bit more wind because there's more of a cross breeze. But I'm going to put them on the floor next to these beds, which will protect them a little bit. Probably going from greenhouse to high tunnel and just planting them straight out would be fine. Probably they might get a little fussy about it and shock a little bit, but they would recover. But if whenever I go to plant some of these out into my garden beds, I'll move them out here and let them harden off just a little bit in the evenings for a couple of days. And that way they're used to the full sun. It's really important in like the early summer when you're doing it because obviously you're having longer days, more intense sunlight, and it's hotter, but you still do have to harden off fall plants. I'm not quite ready to put these in the ground yet just because I'm not 100% sure exactly where I want everything. Because I don't just need to think through what is best for this winter. Which if I were just thinking about what was best for this winter, I would probably put root vegetables along the sides. And then down the middle, I would put anything that's heading. On the sides, I could put kales, leafy things that aren't heading. The reason being that if it does get really cold and it does freeze hard, so hard that it freezes hard inside the high tunnel, things will still get a little bit damaged. And with kale, or something that you're going to just cut leaves off of, if the outer leaves get damaged, it doesn't really matter that much. But with like a cabbage or broccoli, if the head is developing and that gets damaged, you can hinder your harvest from that plant. So I will want to put the heading things more in the middle. Might not make a difference at all. It might not get cold enough to matter, but that's kind of a precaution for if it does. The other thing I need to play into my plan is next year. So by about April, I'm going to need to be planting seeds out here for the spring, and I need to think about what I'm going to do with my cut flowers. And I'm thinking probably I'll do root vegetables along the side, and then down the sides is where I'll do like happy easy things like zinnias and cosmos for cut flowers, because they grow really fast, whereas I have some bulbs for ranunculus and some things like that that I may put some of those overwinter in these medium beds in the middle. So I've got to kind of make sure my winter plan and my spring plan are as beneficial as possible, so I'm not having to like work around winter in the spring. I want to keep both in mind. Isn't it amazing that, I don't know, 8 weeks ago this could all fit in the palm of your hand, and then in another 8 weeks that this is going to fill out like this 1,500 square foot space? Isn't that absolutely incredible? Now, I also have over here my bot plants, which may have been overkill. I might not have needed these, but I'm just a sucker for plants. Right here, I've got all these flowers, which I'll mix these throughout the garden beds just because there'll be some happy color. I have some more cabbage, some more kale. I've got a little purple bok choy over there. And lots of Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are Maya's favorite garden food. So I love the winter garden, but I really love the summer garden because I love the food. I love tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and all of that. Maya's favorite food is the winter garden. And so while I like Brussels sprouts, I like all of this stuff. I really grow a lot of it for him because he just loves fried cabbage. He loves roasted Brussels sprouts. We eat a lot of soups with things like kales in them. And yeah, so that's why I went. I knew we had started some Brussels sprouts, but I wanted to make absolutely sure. So I have like a whole, almost a little over half a flat of Brussels sprouts for Jeremiah. So between what we started from seed and what I purchased, plus what we're planting from seed now, we plant all our root vegetables from seed. I mean, we're gonna have so much food. Y'all, I just looked up and saw this. So a lot of the okra, we're kind of letting go to seed right now, just because it's getting to the end of the season. So if we let this go to seed, we'll be able to save it. So this is Kibler okra. It's our local variety, and we wanted to save a lot of seeds from them this year. Look at these things. It looks like something you could kill a vampire with. That's crazy. And it's not even started to get hard, so it may get, I mean, it's hard. It's not started to get dry, so it may get bigger. That's pretty wild. And we still have some okra that we can pick and eat here. And I picked a lot the other day and roasted it, but a lot of it we're just letting go. These are wild. I don't know that I've ever seen okra get this big. I mean, these are probably at least 13 inches long. Like, that's pretty big. So this weekend we went up to Clemson, South Carolina for the Farm Where You Live event, and had a really good time. It was really fun. We got to be there speaking with great people like the Dohertys and with Joel Salatin, and it was awesome. A lot of our local friends go to that event and do presentations and speak, so we got to spend some time with them, as well as meet viewers. It's really cool because with homesteading events, especially if you live in a general region, you know, like I actually have a couple of events next year that I'm planning on traveling far for. I'm going to be in Idaho, I'm going to be in Iowa, and I'm pretty sure, like, it's on my calendar. We haven't like finalized all the paperwork yet, but I'm going to be in New England at the end of the year. So lots of outward. I like to go when I get an opportunity to go to far off events, just because it gives me a chance to meet my viewers in that area. But whenever you go repeatedly to events in the same general area, you kind of get to know people. Like, there are people that I've met many times, and, you know, remember their stories and know their names and get updates. It's very special to me. But I had one person tell me, and I just loved hearing this story because it's so related. She was talking about how she first started gardening. She didn't know a lot about it. She didn't have a lot of experience. And she had a broccoli plant, and she was not getting any broccoli, and it was just growing and growing. It was getting really big, but there was no broccoli on it, and she realized she didn't really know how broccoli grew, so she went and searched, how does broccoli grow? And ended up finding my channel and like going deep into watching it and, you know, becoming much more equipped in gardening. Okra was the one for me. I grew up in the South. I grew up eating okra, and I remember the first time that it grew and it came up, and of course I was growing in raised beds with like really rich compost. Okra is not always as like thickly trunked as mine is. Mine grows like 14 feet tall, but we use a lot of compost, and so okra will actually grow in pretty neglected conditions. It will grow and produce in poor soils. And driving around, like living in the South, of course lots of people grow okra, and I will see okra patches where they're close together and they're spindly and wiry, but they're still growing lots of okra, so people do it that way. But because I've always done a lot of compost and fed my soil a lot of organic matter, my okra plants have always been huge. And the first time I grew them, and I mean the trunks were like this big around, they looked like trees, I was so like stunned by it. And I realized, like, I had absolutely zero concept as to how okra grew. Like, I'd eaten it forever, but it had never once occurred to me, like, what does this look like on the plant? And I've now grown okra for years. Obviously, it's, like, very familiar sight to me. So much so that other things in the okra family, just now I see them and I think, that looks like okra. And I don't know, every time I see it growing, it just reminds me of that feeling of being awestruck to realize that I had been eating a food literally my entire life and had zero clue what it looked like in plant form. And being just, and whenever she shared her story about the broccoli, it made me think of how I felt about okra. And you know, these gardens are gorgeous. Look at this. Look at these beets. Oh, here's an example of what I was just telling you guys about. Whenever you grow a couple of beets together, they just don't get it as big, which might not be a bad thing. There's an example of 2 beets growing side by side. Here, look at this, artichoke plants. Aren't those so cool looking? See, artichokes grow up and it's a flower, and whenever we eat an artichoke, we're actually eating the flower that hasn't opened yet, and we're eating the heart of it, which is like the deep, tender place in it. And we peel away the leaves. It's actually what would open up and have this really cool purple flower in it. And this is awesome. This inspires me, and I've been gardening for a long time, but I still think it's so cool to get to bring people in that haven't ever seen plants grow, and they're like, whoa, I didn't know that it did this. I didn't know it looked like this. I didn't know it got so big. A lot of people come in my garden and they'll see things like artichokes, and they'll say, what is that? And I'll say, it's an artichoke. And they've never actually even seen an artichoke or eaten an artichoke that wasn't in a jar, that wasn't already marinated in oil. And I love making that connection back to the origin of things. You know, I love the realization that like a handful of seeds, just a palm full of seeds, can fill a 1,500 square foot garden space in a matter of months. To me, making that connection brought back a lot of capacity for me to believe in abundance in my life, because I had experienced so much lack that, I mean, after years of never having enough, it's hard to believe in abundance when people start talking about abundance mentalities and lack mentalities, and it's hard to really even grasp what that looks like. And I would say that the garden made that possible for me, because seeing just how much multiplication is possible and just how much abundance is possible. For instance, those okra plants, one of those pods, the geese, they're backing me up here. That's what that is. See, I just get to make it up. One of those pods has probably at least 100 seeds in them. And whenever you look and you consider the fact that we've literally picked 100 pods off of that plant, there are probably 40 on there right now that if we went to seeds, you're looking at like just thousands upon thousands upon thousands of seeds. And all of that originated from one seed. And in one generation in the garden, you can go from one seed to more than you could ever possibly plant. And that really made a massive difference in my mindsets. I plant more than we need. And of course, whenever you have animals, you can close the loop. Like, nothing gets wasted on our farm. Even though we can't eat all this food, even when we throw it to the chickens and to the pigs, we are perpetuating the cycle of energy and continuing to grow more food. So maybe I don't eat all those peppers, but they go to the chickens give us eggs, we eat the eggs. If we have excess eggs, we cook them, we give them back to the chickens. And here we have this constantly closing loop, which is incredible. But for me, I love planting so much because I just love being surrounded by this reminder of abundance. I love seeing how things grow. And I think that's probably why I find it so dear to bring people in and see that look on their eyes of like, I didn't know that's how okra grew. I didn't know that's how broccoli grew. I have never seen that before. I didn't know artichokes looked like that. I didn't know those plants got so big. And I love hearing those stories. And so I wonder, like, did you have a moment, like an aha moment where you experienced something for the first time and it was like a revelation to you of like, I had no clue? Was it the number of seeds that you can save from a plant? Was it how big something got? Was it just the way that it grew? I don't know. I love sharing those stories, and I'd love to hear yours. All right, y'all. I've got an appointment this morning, so I have to leave. Unfortunately, I don't get to plant yet. One of the heifers is in heat, and she has been hollering all morning. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today, and all the days you do. I bless you. Until next time.